It is the Doomsday Podcast. There he is, Ed Werder. You see him on WFAA. You hear him in the morning, local radio, the ticket. But mainly, you wait for his opinion on the Doomsday Podcast. And Ed, as only Jerry could, there we were. I don't know. I think I was in Sunday school. Not sure you were in Sunday school this morning, Ed. I'll check on that later.
Somebody has to monitor the news of this podcast.
Yeah.
And I'll be praying into our Bibles and taking a knee.
Okay. I didn't do much. Baptist, we don't do a lot of kneeling.
It's my Catholic background showing, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's okay. If you need to do the cross or whatever, you can sign the cross. We're fine with that on this Sabbath day. Now, Ed, the huge news though comes down. Cowboys. I mean, this is a record-setting contract for Dak Prescott. He is now the $60 million man, and he'll be the highest-paid quarterback until the next one, of course, gets paid. But 4-year deal, $240 million guaranteed. I mean, it sets all sorts of records. And Ed, we've talked about it, over and over. And it did seem like this week Dak's demeanor, even after we taped our preview podcast, changed a little bit and seemed to indicate maybe something was happening. And certainly they get it done on the morning of their first game of the season. So, Ed, I guess that was it didn't have to be the deadline, but they used the first game as the deadline. And as they say, Ed, and with all these recent deals you've signed, and of course your extension, we're going to sign you to with the Doomsday Podcast. Deadlines make deals.
Well, I doubt it was Jerry Jones's goal when this all began, but the Cowboys have made Dak Prescott the highest paid quarterback, highest paid player in NFL history. Just a short time after they made CeeDee Lamb the second highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. And of course, the most dominant player in their season opening win at Cleveland is the next guy to get paid. Micah Parsons has 9 pressures and a sack and tips a ball into an interception. So, Jerry said as far as the timing being opening day, approximately 4 hours before kickoff is when Dak said he was informed by his agent that the deal was done. That Jerry said that tended to bring a certain energy that brought the two sides together. I think Dak may have also just decided that given the money that was being offered, record-setting as it was, there was no reason to assume the risk of a significant injury that could alter his leverage, like the leg fracture he experienced in 2020, which was the last time he was playing on the final year of his contract, that time as on the franchise tag. It's like Troy Aikman told me this week. He said, look, if you think that Dak Prescott is a franchise quarterback, then you get the deal done. And that's what they've done here. I think it's interesting that he got paid $5 million more on average than any other quarterback in the NFL. He also got paid a guarantee of $231 million, which is $1 million more than the quarterback who lost today's game, Deshaun Watson, in that outlier $230 million fully guaranteed contract. I'm pretty confident, Matt, that other franchise owners are not going to like what Jerry did here. Because they'd always viewed any attempt by a quarterback to get a fully guaranteed contract who pointed to Deshaun Watson's deal as a complete outlier. And now they really can't do that anymore because now 2 quarterbacks have been paid more than $230 million in guaranteed money. But I guess my final thought about this is Jerry just seemed to factor everything into this negotiation, including his own mortality. Because at 81, he said, the guaranteed money means it's a big commitment for the next 5 years to our future. He said, there's a lot of me that thinks Dak is our quarterback for the rest of my time. So he's saying, I think in the time that I'm the general manager, owner of this team, the time I have left on this earth, in all likelihood, Dak Prescott's going to be the quarterback. So clearly recognizing they didn't have an alternative solution to the most important position in sports. And Jerry recognizing that he doesn't have time to go through an extensive rebuild.
All right, if Dak can play to 40 and we can get Jerry to 90, That'll kind of match up pretty well. And of course, Dak will have like 2 or 3 new contracts by then. And as we were joking before we came on, Ed, it seems like he's always up, right? I just feel like tomorrow we'll be talking about, oh, we need to get a new deal for Dak. When are they going to do the new deal? They'll be moving money around. And I thought that was funny. Jerry has spent all this time talking himself in circles about, these are 2 separate silos, right? You can get the quarterback done and they want it, but then it's about the rest of the team. And so after doing this deal, Jerry feels the need to go, but you know what? We can build a team around him. We can make this work. When the last year, he's been talking about how you can't make all that work. So we'll see how they do it. But for one day, everybody, they got the deal done. I don't know how fans, I would say Cowboys fans, I think happy to have some closure to this story with Dak, but on the same hand, let's see how it plays out. They could be happy about it, and if it's another poor playoff performance, they'll be mad about it. They'll say it's a bad contract. So it all comes down to what happens when the playoffs get here.
Well, the fair criticism, I think, is with both the Lamb deal and certainly with Dak's deal, you knew what the market was. Why didn't you get these deals done in a more timely fashion so that you could have more fully participated in free agency and created a better roster around those players, addressed more of your own weaknesses, which were exploited in the playoff loss at home to Green Bay. But ultimately, I think it's great for Dak that he doesn't have to be asked the question every week about the status of his contract and how he feels about it. And he said this week, I was out there on Thursday at the Star, and he said, hey, I'm able to compartmentalize these kinds of things. But that's not to say that everybody on the team can do the same thing. And so I think it's important for peace of mind for the players. You're asking them to focus on, winning week to week. So this is no longer a component in their locker room. And Dak certainly got to feel like for all the questions that the Cowboys management created about whether they truly believed in him or not, they have finally shown full faith, and they paid him to be their guy for the foreseeable future.
All right, it is time to get into this. We wanted to start you with Dak. It was a huge news before the game, and boy, Ed, I love it. If you'll move over just a little bit this way, the other way. I can see you even better. Oh, you're in the middle of my screen now. I love it. It is time for the Doomsday Podcast. Mike from Rogue Media Network, please play the music. All right, Cowboys, Ed, go to Cleveland, win 33-17. You talked about, being exploited and things like that in the past, and we know what happened against Green Bay. This was such a dominating win that we were left, hoping we would see the novelty of the first 71-yard field goal in NFL history. And unfortunately, some weird clock management allowed it to happen, and then Mike McCarthy thought best of it and didn't have it happen. But a dominating first half of the Cowboys. It started out kind of scary. They had the nice punt return for 28 yards. They get the field goal. Cowboys hold the field goal. And from there, it was just utter dominance. And Deshaun Watson, who has, like we talked about, is similarly guaranteed to Dak Prescott. He just, again, you can blame it on his O-line because they were missing their starting offensive tackles. You can blame it on whatever. But he had an awful day, and he was under duress. And I would say, other than the Dak headline, the headline B is Mike Zimmer and his first outing. The Cowboys defense was absolutely dominant to the point where, they didn't really have to do anything on offense. They had a punt return for a touchdown. They moved the ball okay, but Dak, given this enormous contract, was not asked to push the ball downfield and do all that much. A tremendous performance by Mike Zimmer's defense.
Well, I would also point out that Mike Zimmer's defense got to play most of the game with a lead because of the Cavante Turpin punt return for a touchdown, and because the Cowboys were able to score points early in the game. I think they scored 27 consecutive points after allowing the Browns to get on the board with a field goal. But yeah, to sign Dak Prescott to a historic contract on opening day and then win decisively on the road against an opponent that led the NFL in defense and made the playoffs last season. I mean, that's the very thing the Cowboys have not done in recent years. For all their success, they're 15-1 at home the last 2 years, but just 8-9 on the road. And just looking at bigger picture, Mike McCarthy in his career was only one game over 500 as a coach on the road. And we all saw what happened last year when they got the ball run at them by the 49ers, by the Bills, by the Eagles, and they lost in difficult environments. This had the potential to set up much the same way. But the Cowboys scored 33 points against a Browns team that never allowed more than 27 last year at home. The Cleveland defense allowed the NFL in fewest points per game at home last year, 13.9. And, the Cowboys, as you mentioned, fortunate to play the Browns without their starting offensive tackles and running back Nick Chubb. But winning on the road against a playoff opponent with one of the most feared defensive players in the NFL, where you're starting two rookie offensive linemen, I give the Cowboys a lot of credit for that. I thought they handled Myles Garrett really well. Dak Prescott was on the move quite a bit. I thought it was interesting early in the game, before he got his sack, that the Cowboys not only had rookie left tackle Tyler Guyton blocking him, they also had Ezekiel Elliott, one of the best blitz pickup guys in football, blocking him. And Tyler Smith, the left guard, a lot of times was helping Guyton block him. So they had a great plan for erasing him from not allowing him to take over the game as he has so often. But I thought they played well. And Cooper Beebe, you're talking about a guy who 6 months ago was shotgun snapping to his mom in their backyard. And he's in a hostile environment in Cleveland, making checks at the line of scrimmage and leading a win. There are still some problem spots on the team. And you're right. Overall, I think in the end, your takeaway is how great Mike Zimmer's defense was. And it was really much the same of what we saw when Dan Quinn was coaching the defense in terms of pressures, 6 sacks, 2 takeaways. I mean, it was all the same style of defense. And yet I think if you ask Mike Zimmer, he would say the thing that pleased him the most was how well they played within the structure of the defense today.
Yeah, and to talk about some of the defense, I thought Kalen Carson made a couple of plays on the ball early that may have settled him down. Late, Diggs gets an interception. That brings back good memories for the Cowboys. His 2021 record-setting season followed up with, the 2022 season. And so to get him in there, have a pick, he could have had another pick. He's mad about that, not getting that one. But I thought whatever they tried on Micah Parsons, and I was kind of funny to listen to Tom Brady, and you're at most of the years, you've been at these games. You could actually listen to the TV broadcast on some of this now. I thought that was an interesting thing today. I'm sure Twitter was extremely kind to him, and everybody had very measured takes on how he did. But that was one of the things when you're new at broadcasting, which he is, you kind of were like, they're chipping him. And he kept saying it. They're trying to chip him, and it didn't matter. He said that over and over, and Micah Parsons was just dominant, and they would try to hit him with a running back. And at one point, I think I heard Brady say, well, the running back's got to do a better job holding up against Mike. I'm like, really? You're going to ask the backup running back to block him? Okay, good. And they just couldn't find him. He was too fast. And then Ed on top of, so he had 5 quarterback hits, had the sack, had the, batted the pass that led to the Kendricks interception. But on top of that, overshown that one time, the speed on this defense. I mean, think about last year, it was like they had these undersized linebackers, and to fortify this defense and have linebackers, the pass rush. We were kind of worried about the D line, but I think everybody performed. But I mean, obviously, Micah Parsons led the way.
Yeah, and this is the 12th time that the Cowboys have had 5 or more sacks in a game since they drafted Micah Parsons in 2021. That's the most of any team in the NFL over that span. The Chiefs and the Eagles each have 11 such games. And Parsons had 8 individual defensive pressures in this game. 5th time in his career he's had at least that many. That's the most in the NFL, by one over Max Crosby of the Raiders, and we know what a relentless defensive player he can be. But yeah, I mean, and I think the other interesting thing was maybe the guy who had the best game was Eric Kendricks, the linebacker. And in 2 of the last 3 years, the Cowboys have been the last team to sign a veteran free agent. And the player they signed to end that streak this year was Eric Kendricks, who reneged on a deal that he had agreed to with the 49ers to rejoin Mike Zimmer. And he's had over 100 tackles 8 years in a row. Only Bobby Wagner has a longer such streak. And he had, 2 sacks in the game? He had the interception. He played so hard that he ultimately left the game with dehydration. So I thought a great debut for him, as well as for Mike Zimmer and Paul Gunther, who coached together in Minnesota as well. So defensively, they seem to have very much the same identity as we've seen in the past, although maybe better against the run. But I'm not sure how much the Browns were able to test him, because that's one of the things the Cowboys accomplished by building a lead, was you forced the ball into Deshaun Watson's hands, and he had a terrible game. He didn't complete any passing through more than 15 yards down the field. He was 0 for 9 on those, and he had virtually no success when he was pressured, and the Cowboys pressured him 25 times on the
game. In fact, under pressure, at one point I looked up there, Ed, and you probably have the final number. It was 2 for 12. I mean, he was in bad shape. And again, he's known as a strong guy who can move. He's got mobility, and yet he didn't have a chance. He gets sacked 6 times. I would like to add, Ed, that I think Kendricks may be the first player Mike Zimmer's ever forgiven. Mike, after reading that story about his time with the Vikings, it did not end well with a lot of those players. And I think Eric Kendricks was one of the players who may have been quoted saying something about the atmosphere the year after Zimmer was gone, and Zim didn't like that. And before they could sign Kendricks, Zim and Eric had to clear the air, and then he welcomed him back in. But you saw that story. I was amazed at that, because I know how much he loved Terrence Newman, and basically in that story, Zim was quoted saying, "Well, yeah, he and I are done." It's like, whoa, whoa. I'm glad you've shown me a little more forgiveness over the years, Ed. That's a rough deal, man. We don't want to cross Zim. Gee whiz. So anyway, all across the board, strong day for the defense. Great, for Zimmer and Ed. I did want to take this time to say real quick. I just, not long ago, I found out that Marable Homes, who we've loved and has been a big part of this podcast, they're signing up for year three. And Ed, the great thing about this is now that we do all this beautiful video and people can see our wonderful hair, and I'm wearing these new glasses, people are freaked out to not have me in sunglasses. But we have the video to go in and show off some of these homes. And Ed, they're just more gorgeous than ever. Preston Hollow, Lake Highlands, Highland Park. I'm sure they'll come to Flower Mound, Ed. But I just wanted to give a big thanks to Blake Marable, Amy Marable. In fact, they got some. They had to say goodbye to Amy's mom this past week, and that's a tough thing that the Marable family's going through. But they're just incredible people, and want to send them our condolences, Ed, and welcome them back in to the Doomsday Podcast.
Yeah, bringing them back seems to go hand in hand with that contract extension you mentioned a few short minutes ago. Maybe it has nothing to do with it, but
yeah, you're cutting out on me a little bit, but we'll get back to that. And our folks, Glenn Stretch Smith will be making an appearance. I mean, it's hard to, between he and Ed and their association with WFAA, it's hard to find time, but we will make time for both of those guys. They should put you all on camera together, Ed.
Do you know what I have to do? You know what I have to do after day after games? Tomorrow morning I have to be in Dallas in a suit in the studio for a segment at 6:45 in the morning.
Yeah, that's again, I would redo your deal. Like I would try to get out of that.
I hope everybody will join us on Daybreak tomorrow. Me and Mark Eistuch, formerly from the NFL Network, have a nice little football segment planned for about 10 minutes. That's probably going to be more like 3 or 4, but I'm planning on 10.
Like to hear more of the young eyes too, but I will be up early trying to watch that. I mean, honestly, if there's ever a morning they want the full complement of the Doomsdayers, we can probably make that happen. Of course, there'll be a price tag attached to that, and that'll probably eliminate me. Okay, it's Mosley, it's Werder, it's the Doomsday Podcast, and let's flip over there. We talked about Dak. Dak goes out there, workmanlike performance, 19 for 32. Doesn't even make it to 200 yards. What was it, 179? I would say big play for him. CD makes it was a gorgeous throw. He put it the only place you could put it. Denzel Ward's a really good defensive back for the Browns, and CD reaches up there with one hand, brings it in. That's a huge play. And then, of course, the touchdown to Cooks was just kind of off his back foot, under heavy rush, and there's no way that was at safety. What's this? Thornhill, is that his name?
Juan Thornhill.
Juan Thornhill can't cover that, right? And so gorgeous play by Dak. So Dak did everything he needed to do. Were there a couple of moments where you're like, whoa, Dak, interception Dak is back? Yeah, there were a couple of scary moments, but for the most part, thought he had a pretty solid performance.
Yeah, he managed the game and the situation and the circumstances extremely well. From having the young lineman having to help him with his checks and making identifying pass rushers and so forth, to handling the crowd noise, to getting the ball snapped, to moving around as part of the package to deal with Myles Garrett. He beat the Jim Schwartz blitz on the touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks that you're talking about. And then I think offensively, the other thing that was a positive, they really did use CeeDee Lamb in the run game quite a bit. That to me is the thing that still would be the most disconcerting, is there is no explosive ability in the running game if it's not coming from a wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb. Although we did see the value of Ezekiel Elliott in his return, and the first time he's worn number 15 with the Cowboys around the goal line, which is a big problem for them last year. I think they were 8 for 16 from the 1 yard line last year. And obviously this was from the 2 or the 3, but Zeke had no problem running it in against the Browns for a touchdown, his first back in the Cowboys uniform. So I thought their short yardage run game showed some promise that we haven't really seen in recent years. And Dak certainly managed the game better than McCarthy managed the end of the first half, and denied Brandon Aubrey a 61-yard field goal that would have tied for the longest in NFL history and been the longest outdoor field goal in NFL history when they took the delay of game penalty, even though he had 2 timeouts left.
Yeah, that was strange right there. You brought up for a moment there earlier, Tyler Guyton starting his first game with the Cowboys at left tackle, and having to go up against Myles Garrett. He did get beat on a sack. I think they kind of change up the offense a little bit to get the ball out, get some tempo, try to not let him have as much time to get home. That was, and again, that wasn't just the word. I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to happen to him. But for the most part, I thought he stayed in there and battled. I thought BB did too. The O-line did a pretty workmanlike job. And to your point about Zeke, he served notice, didn't he, right off the bat with a leaping over. He hurdled somebody right on the back. They didn't even need him in the second half. I think he had 1 carry, had about 8 carries for 40 yards in the first half. Thought looked fine. Had a little bit of a burst, and then Dowdle was a nice change of pace and gave you a little bit of wiggle. I mean, do I think they have I don't know. I still don't love their running back room, but for one day it was enough. What they were able to get done, and even like Brooks, a player that was really a non-factor last year, made a play in traffic, and then I would just have to say, Ed, the kicker is unbelievable. The kicker is Brandon Aubrey is on a pace to be the greatest kicker in franchise history. And he already, he's the best long-distance kicker in the NFL right now. And, in fact, since he's been with the Cowboys, he's now 11 for 11 from 50 and out, and he honestly makes 57-yarders look like they're nothing. That most kickers, it looks like a 42-yard field goal or something. And then, as you said, Ed, he had we thought he might get a shot at a 71. Should have had a 66, but Mike and of course they were mad at the officials. But again, you got to bang the time out there to make sure you get that kickoff.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if the officials didn't properly reset the play clock, which was the argument from the Cowboys sideline. You're supposed to be watching the clock go down, and if you take a penalty there, you're already at the outer reaches of any kicker's range, even Brandon Aubrey's, and you have 2 timeouts, so you're really losing nothing. And then by not doing so, you deny yourself a chance at 3 points, and you deny your kicker a chance at NFL history.
Yeah, but I mean, the good thing is, for the most part, Coach McCarthy's never had any game management issues, and I really enjoyed hearing you talk about Dak's game management. He has become the highest paid bus driver quarterback in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, all his 500-yard passing games, leading the NFL in touchdown passes last year. Yeah, he's a bus driver.
Screen game. He's a big screen game guy. Okay, I want to get, by the way, your take, because you've been with ESPN for 26 seasons, and it always makes you a tad bit uncomfortable when I start being the media critic. But I'm going to give my take on Brady. I'm going to get you, but first of all, Ed, if you're comfortable, it is time for our grade segment, and the harshest grader really in the NFL, it is our former Cowboys coach and scout, Glenn Stretch Smith. And it is our Stretch Plays portion of the Doomsday Podcast. And Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys coach and scout, and you see him with that new haircut. He is getting ready for some WFAA duty this evening. He'll be on Sports Special with Joe Trahan, throwing down some of the stuff after looking at some of this. And but he gives us his grades. People love it. And Stretch, welcome back to Doomsday. Pretty dominating performance by Mike Zimmer's unit. And I wanted you to, first of all, Micah Parsons, we wondered how Zimmer would use him. And, as opposed to when he was used with Quinn. And the good news, I think, for Cowboys fans, Stretch, is he was every bit the game wrecker that he was with Quinn. What did you see from Micah, and then kind of how he was used by Mike Zimmer to really give that Cleveland offense all kinds of problems?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it initially, and you take your first look, and you see it is 3 true defensive linemen in the game. So there was 2 defensive tackles that were rolling in, and DeMarcus Lawrence is at the end. And if you're upstairs as a coach and you're looking down and you're looking for the personnel that they're playing with, it truly looked like the Cowboys were playing with 3 defensive linemen, 3 true defensive linemen, and then they had 3 linebackers and Micah, Kendricks, and Overshown. And so when you think about schematically, there's 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs in a nickel situation. You think, well, who's playing this other defensive end? And I'm talking about on first down situations when they were in 11 personnel, Micah was lining up as a true defensive end. Well, what that does is it causes you as an offensive lineman to count a little differently who you are going to protect. Who is going to be your responsibility in this protection? Are we taking care of the 4 down and the Mike? Or are we taking care of the 3 down and the 2, which would be maybe the Mike and the Buck linebacker? Who are we protecting? And so initially it caused immense issues with their offensive line. Now they're missing 2 of their offensive tackles, and you know what, that happens in football. So I think when you look at it schematically, Zimmer said, "Hey, we're gonna show this, and we're gonna mess with them. We're gonna get in their head," and I think that's exactly what they did. That's one thing. The other thing was you saw the physical play of linebackers in Kendricks and Overshown. I mean, they are physical, downhill guys, and you saw defensive tackles in Odigizua and the big guys inside, Mozzie, Phillips. You saw them playing their gap, and then getting those linebackers to run to the football. So Zimmer was able to immediately set the tone for the football game with what they did from a personnel standpoint. And then you start looking at how Carson played and how the defensive backs played. And I know we'll get into all that. I just want to give a brief overview of what Zimmer was doing in order to really cause them some problems with what they were doing and how they were counting who they were going to protect in a protection standpoint.
All right, and they got tons of pressure on Deshaun Watson. He was not good under pressure. At one point I looked and he was 2 for 12, and they were just completely out of the game. He was under duress, 6 sacks. Some of that is just having I like that you said Overshown. Of course, he's your University of Texas. For people that don't know, Stretch played at the University of Texas, played football there, and Overshown looks to be another good one out of UT, and UT coming off a big win over Michigan. Now, Stretch, from a grade standpoint on that back end, I thought Kalen Carson made a couple of plays on the ball early, maybe settled him down. He looked pretty good. Great to see Diggs get an interception. If you're just looking at that back end of the defense, how did they hold up back there? And did Diggs, from what you could tell in his first time back in a long time, how did he function on the back end of that defense?
Well, when you start, in my mind, when you talk about Mike Zimmer, you start on the back end with the safeties.
Yeah.
You can remember how Woodson played. If you can remember how George Teague played. They were guys that would come down into the box. They'd be very physical down in the box. They'd knock the tight end around. They'd do some things in the pass game. And so to me, it started with Hooker and Wilson really being physical. Then you had Carson and they tried to help him kind of get in the flow of the game. And he did a great job of getting in the flow of the game. Diggs got the pick, and we know he can play. So when you combine that with what Jordan Lewis did, how Jordan Lewis, for an undersized guy, is
good tackler
on the perimeter. I just think that you saw the job that Zimmer and Al Harris, the defensive back coach of the Cowboys, they coordinated really well. They're coached really well. And I thought they played a heck of a football game. Now you can say, well, what happened on the outcut for the touchdown? That happens on anybody. And so, it's hard to ding anything that the secondary did. I thought they did a phenomenal job. And when you look at it overall, how they tackled, how they made plays, what they did in coverage, they didn't get beat. Yeah, they run the sluggo, and anybody's going to bite on the sluggo route in that situation. To Cooper, he overthrew him. Okay, are you going to ding him for that? It's hard to ding a guy on a double move, but I think overall you have to give the secondary an A with how they played.
Yeah. And that, by the way, that was Watson took a big hit from that that defensive tackle on that play and made a great throw. And so we can ding Watson, but boy, he was under a lot of duress. And so a good performance by Mike Zimmer right out of the chute. Stretch, let's go over to the offensive side of the ball. People do love hearing your grades. And by the way, Bones Fossil, he's drawn your ire over the years. But boy, I tell you, I think you're going to have some good things to say about him, although the game management from McCarthy. In fact, before we get to the offense, let's go right there. He boots it, and he's good from 66, but they get the delay a game penalty. They're really mad there. Bones was running after the officials at halftime. McCarthy was upset. He didn't think they reset the game clock. But in my mind, Stretch, you have to bang the timeout there, right? You can't be worried about, they didn't. You got 2 timeouts left, and you can't let it get to the point where if you're going to attempt from 66, you can't let them push you back and get you out of the opportunity, especially with that great of a kicker who truly can make those kicks.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. The first game of the year, it's going to happen. I mean, that's just, you look around the league at some things that happened. I think the easy thing to do is to start to, get after them right now. It's a little early in the year to do that. I mean, when you're trying to get guys on and off the field, I thought, he obviously thought they were going to reset the clock. I can argue that the officiating didn't do a great job. I mean, I can argue that they were just as rusty as it felt like some of the players were early in the game. So I don't want to ding them for that. I think the kicker is unbelievable. He was in the USFL when I was there, and I mean he has got a phenomenal swing to his leg. There's a thump to him kicking that ball. I think 71 was a little too much. It was the only time today really I kind of even said anything at the TV when I'm sitting there watching it is don't try this from 71. You're not going to be, if he mishits it, they return the thing and get right back in the football game. It just wasn't worth the bang for the buck right there to get that done. So I think it was unfortunate and how it was officiated. It's hard to tell. They thought that they were going to reset that 25-second clock. Should he have banged the timeout? We could sit here and cut that a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, I thought the special teams did an unbelievable job. Turpin finally gets his return for a touchdown. He is so dangerous when he sees a crease.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he goes north and south. They did a great job of blocking it. He was looking for that last block. He got it and walked at the end zone. So all of those things that we're talking about here as we're grading these guys, all of these things that we're saying, that's going to cause New Orleans. It's going to cause Baltimore. It's going to cause all these teams that you're going to play. It's going to cause you some real problems. And so I do think that at the end of the day, the Cowboys special teams did a great job. You can't give them anything but an A. I mean, it's just
kind of a kinder, gentler stretch, especially after a 33-17 victory. And I understand that it's hard to come in and ding a bunch of folks, especially first game when they went out and had a dominating performance. I did want to hear your thoughts on, they had a plan for Myles Garrett. He did get the sack, but you had two rookie offensive linemen, one at center. They love showing that thing with his him out there snapping to his mom. Thought she did a good job getting Cooper Beebe ready for the season out there in the yard at the family home. And then Tyler Guyton out there at left tackle. What did you think about the approach from the standpoint of the blocking up front and then even the run game, trying to get a little run game going in that first half with Zeke?
Yeah, I thought that they had a good game plan. And the game plan was initially, hey, we're going to show some of these jet sweeps and we're going to run away from Myles Garrett. And they did a great job of doing that with CD. And then they showed it one time and booted right back into Myles Garrett, who was chasing the crap out of it at the time. Dak gets out in the flat. I thought personnel-wise, they did a great job of how they were moving personnel in and out of the game. They were in 22 personnel a lot of times with two tight ends and Lipke at fullback, and being able to move some guys around in order to not give Myles Garrett that short edge. Now, there's times when you're trying to get guys out in the route, trying to get 4 and 5 out into the route. And guess what? When you do that, yeah, Tyler Guyton had an issue. Anybody's going to have an issue over there. So I'm not dinging him. I think Cooper Beebe did a great job of handling the snap count, calling the protections today, pointing out where they were going. So first game, I mean, to do what they did, to go to Cleveland and to handle a playoff team from a year ago, I think speaks volumes about the job that Mike McCarthy is doing with the offense. I think it speaks volumes about how the young guys played. And I thought Zeke ran the ball hard. He caught some screens. We know he's a good screen guy. He did a great job at protection. I thought Dowdle did fine. They put Vaughn in there. All of them did a good job. But what I like is they executed a game plan, which they went into the game and said, hey, here's what we need to do. And they executed that really well. Now you can say, well, they didn't do anything in the second half. And yeah, they had the chance to put their foot on their throat, and they didn't do that. It's the first game of the year, and a lot of these guys, it's their first time to play. And so, and I'm talking about first time to play this year. They didn't get any snaps.
Yeah.
Sure, they got some joint practice time, and we can sit here and cut all that a million different ways. But at the end of the day, you got a receiver who's been in there a week. You got a quarterback who just signed a huge deal, and it didn't look like they were bothered by that. They went out and executed a game plan, and Mike McCarthy put a hell of a game plan together. And I'm critical as you can be when you need to be critical. And also from a coaching standpoint, I'm one of those guys that says, hey, hell of a job. And you know what? It was a great job. It was a great win all the way around to go get it on the road.
All right. And Stretch, would you mind in our Stretch Play segment, can you show us real quick, since we've got big time video now with the podcast, we've really entered the new century here. Can you show us what sport coat you're going to have on tonight?
No.
Do you have that nearby? Oh, really? You're not gonna be able to share that with us.
Sean came and put me in a room, so I wouldn't be bothering the rest of these people trying to put it together. No, Mosley, I can't.
All right, love to see that sport coat. Hey, appreciate you, buddy. It is what we call our Stretch Plays with former Cowboys coach and scout Glenn Stretch Smith. Stretch, good night.
Have yourself a great evening, Mosley. We'll see you next week, brother.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith. Good to have him on this evening. All right, there he was, Glenn Stretch Smith, and he found a couple things, to criticize, but for the most part, seemed to be very pleased with what the Cowboys were doing. And I heard from Stretch while my alma mater was playing yesterday, Ed, and heard from him a little too much. Okay, I was aware to see on my own that we were getting killed by the Utah Utes, but he was weighing in on some of that. Now, Ed, and we can talk about too. They get ready to face a New Orleans team. I had to, this is the time of year I'm like, who's the coach of these teams? Who's the quarterback? And it turns out Derek Carr is the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And 19 for 23 for over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. And so they had a complete beatdown of the Carolina Panthers, a division game for them. And I would have to say that Cowboys, that'll be a good test for the Cowboys, and a rare noon start for us. Is that right? Did I look at that right?
How beautiful is that?
The Cowboys have a noon game. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
wow.
And Tom Brady's going to be calling it. So we better be careful what we say about him here. But Dennis Allen is the coach of the Saints, having succeeded Sean Payton. He was on that staff, obviously. Defensive-oriented coach, former defensive coordinator, still makes the defensive calls. So they generally play very tough on defense, and I would expect them to challenge the Cowboys on offense in that way. But the Cowboys are set up pretty good right now. You got the Saints, then you play the Ravens, and they're unique because they're one of the most physically punishing teams in the league, and they've got one of the most elite running quarterbacks in football history. I think he just had his 14th 100-yard rushing game on opening night. So Lamar Jackson, who beat Dak Prescott to be the league MVP last year, will be coming to Jerry World. And then the Cowboys have a short week road game at the Giants. So that's their schedule for the next few weeks. Very manageable, I think. I think they'll only be an underdog to the Ravens if they're an underdog in that game. But yeah, they're going to be challenged by some good teams. They're playing a first place schedule. You'd expect that. And as for Tom Brady, I would say he's not yet as good a TV analyst as he is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But that's a pretty high standard. I think he'll get less criticism in his debut than Colt McCoy does for his last night doing the Colorado-Nebraska game. Seemed like there was a lot of displeasure about Colt McCoy's work. I thought Tom Brady was pretty good.
Okay,
I like what he said. The thing that resonated with me was sort of his evaluation of what it's like to play against Mike Zimmer, and saying that you like, as a quarterback, you like to be decisive and you like to be sure of what you're seeing, and you like to be able to react quickly. And Zimmer really takes that away from you. That he forces you to hold the ball, to think about your decisions in a very different way than most people, because of the confusing array of looks he gives you throughout the course of a game and the pre-snap adjustments that are required to have any level of success against him.
I sort of think Eddie learned like how hard it is. like to stay, like you can imagine. I mean, for me to stay engaged in a 30-minute podcast can be tough. Like to stay for a 3 hour football game, sort of be on point, be concise, and the thing that screwed it up for all new analysts, even though and of course Fox spent untold millions on him. Romo was such an overnight success that really screwed it up for everybody. Even Aikman, as great as he is, was able to do NFL Europe, had Sham helping him to a certain extent, and a little bit was able to ease his way into it. I don't think he was the lead guy right away. And so, we think he was just the lead guy from the very start. Some of these guys have been able to kind of ease their way in. And this was huge debut, huge buzz for Fox. And there he is. And I thought he was nervous. I thought he had a hard time. Like he kept saying, "Excuse me." And because he needed to kind of clean things up a little bit, and he would have these little phrases that he knew it in his mind he got wrong. In time, he'll just kind of learn to flow through that and everything. So again, and he's become so outgoing and kind of funny in his post-Patriots time. But that's like, Mickelson was a little bit like this when he got funnier before everybody started hating him again because of the live stuff. But he's got to figure out. And again, that's why I thought Peyton Manning was so smart to not take any of these gigs. Manning gets to just have fun and riff on stuff, and it fits him beautifully because he's funny. Tom's actually kind of funny, but man, you gotta get in everything. So anyway, people are going to kill him for this first one. And then hopefully he ignores that. He settles in, gets some good feedback, and he'll be okay. And you raised some good points. First of all, his credibility is through the roof because of who he is, but that also hurts him because when you're the greatest of all time, it's kind of like when they put Montana on TV, people are like, well, this is the greatest. He's the greatest. Like, he's got to be good. And Joe was not that great on TV because Joe was Joe Cool. He was kind of like, hey. It was okay for Fouts because Fouts wasn't number one. Although, so anyway, I do have thoughts, but I think he'll eventually settle in and be fine. But
maybe next week we can ask Tom to critique your work.
Okay, well, let's not do that. Tom does not care about my work on Doomsday. I think he does listen to my ESPN Central Texas work a little bit, but I think he'll be fine. He'll settle in. And if he needs me for anything, I'm there for him as a good sound.
He's got 10 years and 370 million. I think he'll be okay either way.
Yeah. They're probably going to let him at least get to week 2. All right.
He's just going to do Cowboy games for all of his career.
By the way, I think that's a bad move by Fox. You ease the guy in on a little bit lesser game. You don't have to put him on the Cowboys every week, which has obviously the most viewers. But again, everybody will be fine. Ed, thank you, man. We cannot wait. Anybody listening to us in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or anywhere in Texas, really, WFAA is pretty accessible to places. Wake up with Ed, 6:45 tomorrow morning. I'll be taping it.
Please do.
Yeah, I'll be taping it. Thank you, Ed. Tremendous work, and I'll let you have the final word. Is there anything that you wanted to get off your chest from this Week 1 victory, dominating fashion over the Cleveland Browns? Cowboys headed to the promised land for the first time in 30 years. They're headed to an NFC title game.
I've got nothing else. I look forward to seeing you in the suite high above the stadium playing field after the Cowboys play the Saints next week.
It's going to be great. We'll be up there a little sooner than in the past, won't we? Oh, man. All right. For Ed Werder and Matt Mosley, I just want to say thanks for everybody that has been a part of this one. For Ed Werder and Rogue Media Network and our buddy Mike from Rogue Media Network and Marable Homes, our presenting sponsor, I'm Matt Mosley saying good night.
We are Rogue Media Sports.